So now we're going to talk a little bit about the work study program overall, some of the objectives and outcomes of the program, some of the regulations that govern the program, and some of the institutional guidelines that also govern the program, just so you kind of have a basic understanding in terms of what this program looks like and some of the rules and regulations that are going around it. So what is work study and what does it aim to achieve? So work study enables students to earn a portion of their financial aid by working part-time. Students will work a specified number of hours a week, and that's a conversation you're going to have with your supervisor, and you'll be paid through the college's payroll department for those hours. So every 2 weeks you're going to be submitting a timesheet and getting paid for the previous timesheet, and we'll talk about how to submit a timesheet here in a little bit. In addition to financial aid and other benefits, work study employment may provide students with valuable experience and introduction to what may become a lifelong career and networking opportunities that may lead to future employment. It also aims to assist students in meeting educational costs. To the maximum extent possible, it aims to provide jobs that complement and reinforce students' educational and career goals. It also aims to regulate employment conditions, including pay, that is both reasonable and appropriate according to the type of work performed. So just know that a lot of these pieces are already going on in the back end. This isn't really necessarily stuff you need to be worrying about as you're applying for jobs, but all of these things are actually going on to make sure that the program is fair and equitable and an otherwise really good experience for all of you. So the work study program was originally established by Congress in 1964 and was designed to provide financial assistance to students for their educational expenses. As we mentioned before, students gain valuable employment experience while complementing their educational goals. Positions are available to students for employment both on and off campus, with community-based organizations performing work in the public interest. So we do have some of your peers that are working off campus in some of the local museums. Some of them are working in local elementary schools, local YMCAs, things of that nature. So those opportunities are available if those are things you're interested in. They are also listed on the Front Range Community College website if you want to check some of those out. So there's two main funding types, and you may have seen some of this stuff on your eWolf if you've worked on campus before. So primarily we get funding from the United States Department of Education in the form of federal work study dollars, and we get funding from the state of Colorado in the form of Colorado work study dollars. Federal work study money is money that we use. We use the two funds interchangeably, so there really isn't a whole lot of difference on the front end for you as the employee, but these things are going on in the back end. With federal work study, the federal government has provided these funds to be used for students with documented financial need. Any of those off-campus positions we talked about a minute ago would also be available through this program for nonprofit agencies and local elementary schools. As part of that money that we receive from the federal government, we have to use at least 7% of that money towards positions and students employed in community service jobs in the public interest. And at least one student has to be working in some sort of family literacy project to make sure that we're kind of essentially paying it forward to the communities that we're serving. Colorado Work Study operates very similarly. There is not that community service component tied to it, however. It is funded by the Colorado General Assembly for work programs and is awarded to undergraduate Colorado residents with documented financial need. We do get a kind of sub-portion of money from them that we can use for students who may not necessarily have a documented financial need, but for any of these programs, we do need to have a free application for federal student aid or a FAFSA on file before we can determine a student's eligibility at all. So work study employment is governed by standard employment conditions, so the same employment conditions that your supervisors are held to, that I'm held to, you're held to as well. Students may work up to 20 hours per week during the academic year. They may work up to 28 hours per week during periods of non-enrollment, so the week of Thanksgiving, winter break, pending eligibility, and spring break. Students in good standing for financial aid may continue in between terms, and that information will come from the financial aid office directly to your supervisor, so make sure you're in touch with them about that. Students are paid weekly, as I had mentioned earlier, and they must be paid a wage no less than the current federal minimum wage. For this academic year, students will start at $10.20 an hour, since Colorado's minimum wage is going up to $10.20 an hour as of January 1st of 2018. Student positions cannot replace or displace full-time positions or employees, so if the department you're working in, they all go in on a winning lottery ticket and everybody calls in rich Monday morning, they can't replace those positions with 5 or 6 student employees to fill those positions. They have to fill those positions with full-time employees. So federal work-study positions must not involve constructing, operating, or maintaining any part of a building used for religious worship or sectarian instruction. So if we built a house of worship on any of our campuses, we couldn't necessarily hire students to be working in there to kind of maintain the operation. You can't receive gifts or commissions as a condition of your employment. Essentially, you're getting paid for those hours. That is your gift. That is your quote-unquote commission. All of your human resources paperwork, including your background check and new hire forms, must be completed before a student can begin working. And all of you have clearly done that because you wouldn't be listening to this course had that not already been done. But just know that all of those pieces need to be in place before we can get a student a start date. The Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938 prohibits employers, including schools, from accepting voluntary services from any paid work-study employee. So if you're in between classes and you just want to help out for a minute and you want to come in, please make sure you include that information on your timesheet because we do need to pay you for all hours that you work. So if you've been paid for a job, they have to pay you for all of the time you're putting in for that job.